So if happiness comes from within, then why are we seeking it in objects? Well, we think happiness comes from objects because when we contact them, when we come into contact with the objects of our desire, like the man in our Ferrari, it feels good. And every time you come into contact with an object of your desire, it feels good. It leaves a nice impression on your mind. In Sanskrit, these impressions are called vasanas. So every time you're getting a Ferrari and it makes you feel good, your mind goes, ah, Ferrari, good. Maybe in a different accent, I don't know. Maybe that accent, I don't know. So, and that leaves a vasana for Ferraris on your brain and your mind. So now you want a Ferrari to make you feel good, and you get this addictive process setting up. And because of these habitual tendencies, these vasanas, these habitual tendencies towards something, we seek. We can go one level deeper. Why do we seek? Why do we have these vasanas though? Well, we don't realize that we're already complete and whole, and our nature, happiness is inherent in our nature. We don't realize we're whole and complete. We don't realize that happiness comes from within. Because we don't realize that, we seek it without. We seek it outside of us. We don't seek it within, we seek it without. So we'll quickly recap what we did. In the first session, we did an inquiry into happiness. Some puzzled looks. Yes, that's what we did. We asked ourselves, what are we looking for? What are people generally? And a person, not necessarily spiritually, what are you looking for? We said, well, one of the main things, if not the main thing that we're looking for, is happiness. And not just fleeting happiness, but a long-lasting happiness in which there's no sense of suffering. That's what most people are looking for. Right? And we agreed upon that. We said, yeah, we can see that. And we saw that people are seeking this happiness. How are they seeking it? Well, there are various different ways people are seeking it. They're trying to attain pleasure, perhaps. Simple pleasures. Maybe tasty food, maybe alcohol, maybe sex, maybe watching a nice film makes you feel good. Maybe they're trying to accumulate possessions and give themselves security, make themselves feel secure. Physically secure, psychologically secure. We said, what do you mean by psychologically secure? Well, to bolster your sense of self, your self-concept. That makes you feel good, doesn't it? If you think you're someone, as in you think you're someone, someone special. Maybe you've got some status in society. Maybe you have some power because of your position in society. Or some other form of identity. Maybe you're a father. Maybe that makes you feel good. Or a mother, or a teacher, or a doctor. Again, this kind of status. So we can seek happiness through all these various objects, is what we said. And we said people are seeking happiness through objects. with these gross objects and subtle objects. The gross objects are the things that you can see, touch, feel with your five senses, the things you can perceive with your five senses are the gross objects. The subtle objects are the ones that you can feel and sense, but other people can't directly sense them, like your thoughts and your feelings. And we said, can you actually obtain what you're looking for through objects, gross and subtle objects? Can you obtain lasting happiness? What did we say? We went through the reasons why. We said happiness doesn't, not only can you not get happiness from these objects, but then in the second session we said, where does happiness lie? Where can happiness be found? And does happiness lie in these objects? So we imagine having an object and say, look, if you open up that Ferrari you really want, you open up, has it got some happiness inside it? And when you get the Ferrari, you go, oh, there's my happiness. Oh, no, I'll have a drink. I said, there isn't happiness inside objects. Happiness doesn't lie. And we said that we can prove it. Because one person, Ferraris might make one person happy, but if you give that same Ferrari to someone else, it won't make them happy at all. Whereas happiness was inside the Ferrari, it doesn't matter who you gave it to, they could drink the happiness that lies within it. And it'll make everyone happy, but that's just not the way it works. So we said that happiness doesn't lie in the objects. Where is happiness then? And then we started the conceptual teachings. We said happiness therefore lies in the subject. Happiness comes from within. And we did a little mini analysis of what happens when we imagined a character, a person, who really, really wanted a Ferrari, didn't we? Do you remember? We imagined someone who really, really wanted a Ferrari. They worked day and night, day and night, day and night, to save up money to get a Ferrari. And they were suffering because they didn't have it. That's what we imagined happening in this scenario. And then, one day, they bought their Ferrari. They sat inside it. And it felt amazing. It felt amazing. And we thought, what's happening here? Let's go into this a bit. Let's analyse this a bit. Let's try to understand what's happening, the mechanics of it. Where did that happiness come from? We want to be happy, right? We want to be happy forever, right? So where did this happiness come from? And we noticed that all the time the man was suffering. It was when he wanted the Ferrari, when he didn't have it. And when he got in the Ferrari, in that moment, there was no desire, there was no mental process of desire going on. Because he had what he wanted. So when he came into contact with the object of his desire, the desire momentarily left him. And what happened? He relaxed and he enjoyed that moment. Why? Because he had been looking for it for such a long time. And now he was there. He could finally allow himself to let go. And the bliss rose up within him. The bliss innate in himself manifested. And he felt happiness. And we said the Ferrari didn't make him happy. It was a trigger. It allowed him to access happiness that was already within him. You see? So the first session was that no object, gross or subtle, will lead to lasting satisfaction. Because all the objects come and go, they always come and go. They're limited, every object's limited. It's not going to give you an unlimited result, a lasting result, because it's naturally finite. And we said, well, one very important thing, we said that experiences are also objects. They're subtle objects. So you go on a roller coaster at a theme park and you feel great, or you feel petrified, but it kind of feels good as well. That's an experience, isn't it? You've gone there, you've had the thrill, you've had an experience. And that experience is a subtle object. It's a form of pleasure, perhaps in this case. Or it might be pain, if you don't like those theme park rides. But any experience you have is also an object. We're basically saying that experiences are all objects. And no single experience leads to lasting satisfaction. Therefore, enlightenment, if it exists, and from the point of view of the seekers, you don't know if it exists or not. You might have an inkling, you might hope it does, but you don't know. And you can hear a testimony of someone like myself who says they've got their own experience, but actually don't know for sure. But what you can deduce, see the way the teachings work, is that they have a logic underlying them that you can understand, that keeps you going in the right direction, keeps you away from the wrong direction. So even if you don't know for sure if enlightenment even exists, you can still know something for sure. You can know that enlightenment isn't an object. Because if it is an object, it doesn't last. And if it doesn't last, then it's not enlightenment. Because suffering can be around the corner again. We're talking about freedom from suffering. As the teachings progress, you'll see actually error in those statements as well. There are slight problems with what I've just said. But this is the way the teachings work. And there's a reason for that. And that will hopefully become apparent as the sessions go on. So, enlightenment's not this. That's what we found from session 1. And in session 2, we said happiness comes from within. Happiness comes from the subject, not from objects. So that we said if it doesn't come from the objects, it must come from the subject, which is me. Or in your case, it's you. So if happiness comes from within, then why are we seeking it in objects? Well, we think happiness comes from objects. Because when we contact them, when we come into contact with the objects of our desire, like the man fire, it feels good. And every time you come into contact with the object of your desire, it feels good. It leaves a nice impression on your mind. In Sanskrit, these impressions are called vasanas. So every time you're getting a Ferrari and it makes you feel good, your mind goes, Ferrari, good. Maybe in a different accent, I don't know. Maybe that accent, I don't know. So, and that leaves a vasana for Ferraris on your brain and your mind. So now you want a Ferrari to make you feel good. And you get this addictive process setting up. And because of these habitual tendencies, these vasanas, these habitual tendencies towards something, we seek. We can go one level deeper. Why do we seek? Why do we have these vasanas though? Well, we don't realise that we're already complete and whole, and our nature, happiness is inherent in our nature. We don't realise we're whole and complete. We don't realise that happiness comes from within. Because we don't realise that, we seek it without. We seek it outside of us. We don't seek it within, we seek it